I wanted to peel off a few minutes before I got to my actual radio show, which is coming up in a few minutes, right here on my home base, where I actually do these videos from. I watched this video with Joe Biden yesterday, where Biden came out in front of, I think, 9 people in Pennsylvania, made some statements about how the violence in America was all the fault of President Donald Trump. And then Biden just turned away and walked out without taking any questions. This morning, I think I read where Biden, over the course of the last 3 months, has answered 118 questions from reporters. The president is just under 900. So you can do the math on how many more times that is the president has actually been available for media questions. And yet, I don't see a lot of people who are taking Joe Biden on in mainstream media because of his lack of accessibility. Accessibility. There we go. I'll get that out. I just I've gotten to the point where, having been in news media once myself, been out of news media now for, good golly, 17 years, but I spend a lot of time on the streets and at news conferences and anchoring news and doing interviews and all of these things in broadcast radio and television. And at some point, you look at what's happened today and you realize just how badly broken down mainstream media is. There's a website called Spectator USA, and I would urge you to take a look at it. You can get a handful of free peeks every month. Then you do have to buy a subscription, although I would highly recommend that as well if you can afford it. It's a very good magazine, what I would call a magazine for thinking conservatives. And there's a fellow there by the name of Dan McCarthy who was writing today a great piece, and he says that if you look at back at media's coverage of the Obama White House years, he said, take a moment and think to yourself, what would have happened if we'd had a major pandemic with a couple of 100,000 deaths in 2012? What would have been the media coverage then as it endangered Barack Obama's reelection? And he says, stop and think about the fact that this Otto Warmbier kid was kidnapped by North Korea in the last year of the Obama White House, and it was President Trump who got him released. But what would happen if some American today, in the final year of the president's first term, was actually kidnapped? And he poses a lot of these hypothetical questions, but they're basically redundant because we all know what the answers would happen to be. For instance, if Russia had, under Donald Trump, invaded Crimea and annexed it, then they would have said that's more evidence of collusion with Putin and Trump. But that actually happened under the Obama regime, and media didn't bother to even blink. Media hasn't said much of anything about the deal between Israel and the United Arab Emirates because they don't want to give Donald Trump the credit. When all of this is said and done, and what McCarthy says is that the problems in American politics, and a great many people are saying this on the right, you're not hearing it much on the left, but Donald Trump came along. Donald Trump is what you would call, he's just the manifestation of a public anger that had been growing for decades. And for some reason, it was either ignored, or you have people in the elite institutions in this country who are just so blind they were unable to see it. And he says if Trump were to lose in November, he said, you'll see these people likely claim that they've been vindicated, that they've gotten rid of Trump, and then they'll go back to doing the same old, same old. But the problems existed before Trump. They're still going to be there after Trump. And if that happens, then you could say that by 2025, after a term of Biden-Harris, that the country could take a very, very nasty turn. I think that the comments made by Andrew Sullivan in a piece that he wrote the other day that I happened to read Sunday morning, I think he wrote it last Friday, but I read it Sunday morning during my weekend reading. And he says, we are very much like Germany was in the 1920s, with street gangs battling it out. And the next aspect of this is likely going to be rampant inflation that'll follow. And of course, Germany's problems also followed a pandemic and the loss of World War I. They had great inflation. You may remember the old pictures of men who were wheeling home their pay, stacks of paper money in wheelbarrows at the end of a day, because it was that worthless. And the next day it would be even more worthless. And the day after that, more worthless. And we're looking at that as well coming along. And I'm telling you this right now. I've been reading up a lot on what's going on economically and with the Fed policy. Robert Samuelson at the Washington Post, who writes on economic issues, referenced this yesterday. He's more of a liberal writer, albeit maybe even closer to down the middle. And then I read today a piece, I think in the Wall Street Journal, where a writer is also pointing out that we are dangerously close to kicking off another round of rampant inflation or even stagflation. And of course, the government doesn't have the wherewithal, as it did in 1981, to force a recession to bring that all back down and then let the economy boom. We don't have those type of, we're not in that situation, especially now that we're $30 trillion in debt and already in an economic downturn. So you realize that the elites, they may be looking at this and thinking, we've got him now, we've got him now, we've got him now. And they're very upset about the direction the polling is going. But one other quick note on this, I read this morning on 538, where in Minnesota, once known as a very liberal bastion, it is trending red. Trump came pretty close to taking it in 2016. And if he takes it this year, hey, look, all these people who were predicting a Biden victory on July 4th, on Independence Day, sorry, it may not be coming. Anyway, got to run. I want to thank you for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions, you can just write them below in that space that's available. And also subscribe to our videos at Boardwalk Potatoes. And we'll try to keep you up to speed on a great many of things going on, not only in our own communities, but around the world, in your communities as well.